Namaste. My name is Holly Walk and I'm a certified Iyengar yoga teacher. Today we're practicing yoga sequence for boosting up immunity of all kinds. Our first pose is Prasarita Padottanasana with the head on the floor or a support. So I start in the center of my mat, take my hands to my waist, step my legs apart. Do you see how I've taken my legs wide apart? That allows for my spine to extend forward so that my head comes to the floor. And then I place my hands on the floor and make a tripod with my hands and my head. Watch how I draw my upper arms back and press my hands down into the floor to lift my shoulders up. To come out from the pose, I gently bring my head up off the floor and then step my legs back together again. If your head doesn't reach the floor, you can place your head on the block or the chair. Our next pose is Uttanasana, intense stretch pose. This pose will also be done with the head supported. So I take my feet as wide apart as my hips, just like Prasarita Padottanasana. Take my hands to my waist and extend my spine forward. Then bring my head onto the support. See how I lift my shoulders up as I press my hands down, just like I did in Prasarita Padottanasana. To come up, I reverse the order of going in. Our next pose is Shirshasana. It's the head balance pose. For those of you who aren't practicing Shirshasana, either with the wall or away from the wall, you'll practice Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, with the head supported. Again, either on the floor, a blanket, or the block. See how I start on my hands and my knees, and I reach my buttock bones back towards my heels. Have to move the block back. And then lift my knees up off of the floor and bring my head to the support. Those of you who can bring your heels towards the floor while maintaining the inward movement of the thoracic spine towards the chest can do so. When you come out, rest for a moment or two in hero's pose. For those of you who are practicing Shirshasana regularly, just like you did in Adho Mukha Svanasana, you'll keep your thoracic spine moving in and lifting up towards your chest. And then as I reach down through my arms, I lift my shoulders up in the opposite direction. And see how I use the stretch of my legs to help me lengthen the sides of my trunk and lift my shoulders even more. To come out, you'll reverse the order. In Light on Yoga, B.K.S. Iyengar says that Shirshasana is the king of all of the asanas. To balance the stimulating effects of Shirshasana, we'll practice the cooling effects of what he calls the queen of all asanas, Salamba Sarvangasana, the shoulder stand, supported on the chair, and its companion pose, my favorite, Halasana, plow pose. Those of you with neck or shoulder issues will be given 2 other alternative poses to practice after I demonstrate Sarvangasana and Halasana. Sometimes when I'm feeling fatigued, instead of practicing Sarvangasana and Halasana, I also do the options for the neck and shoulder people. This pose involves the use of a yoga chair or any folding chair, or I even use the chairs in my kitchen. If I was taller, I'd put a blanket on the chair so that I had more room between the chair and the floor to extend my spine. See how I start sideways on the chair, take my legs over the back of the chair, and then I bring my heels closer to my buttock bones so that I can lengthen my spine back over the chair. See how I bring the tops of my shoulders to the edge of the blankets, and then once my shoulders are at the edge of the blankets, I extend my legs. If you feel like you're falling off of the chair, chances are you need to bring your buttocks closer towards the back of the chair and then re-stretch your legs. Do you see how I'm holding the sides of the legs near the chair seat? And at the same time, as I stretch my legs up, I press my shoulders down, the tops of my shoulders down, and that opens my chest more. From here, to come into Halasana, I gently bring my feet behind my head. As I release my arms, I continue to lift my thighs up and extend my heels. Do you see how that extended my spine even more? The use of the arms and the legs in all of these poses is a priority to maintain the full elongation of the spine. To come out from this pose, you see how I place my palms on the floor, then my feet on the chair, and I pull the chair towards me instead of pushing it away so that I can bring my buttocks to the blanket and rest. Before I come all the way down. That may have looked a little adventurous for some of you. Let me show you an option. This is also a wonderful alternative for those of you who have neck or shoulder issues, or don't have a chair. I'm changing the way that I'm folding the blankets. The fold of the blankets is important. Folding the blankets this way instead of the narrow way is going to support my back ribs and give me more lift and opening around the area of my heart and my lungs, which is so important for my circulatory system and my respiratory system, especially as I head into fall. So I'm sitting sideways on the blankets with my back to the wall. Watch how I thread my arm through the space between my arm and the floor and bring my shoulder to the floor so I can roll over onto my back and come into legs up the wall pose, Viparita Karani. To come out, I take my arm over my head, roll back onto my side, and rest for a moment. See how I keep my head down as I sit back up. As an alternative to the plow pose, Halasana, I'm going to show you how to do Setu Bandha Sarvangasana using the same blankets. This is the bridge pose. This is my favorite pose to practice every day, especially when I've been spending time traveling in the car, back and forth from work to home. It's also the reverse of sitting in an airplane seat. So see how, just like in chair shoulder stand, I bring the tops of my shoulders to the floor. But do you see how my ribs are stretched into a back bend? And then from here, I extend my legs. Look at the beautiful space that this pose creates in the front of the spine, especially around the abdominal organs and the pelvic organs. If my back felt tender in this pose, I could bend my legs. That would help relieve the extension on my lower spine. To come out from this pose, I do it in stages. And then just like it lights up the wall, I turn over onto my side and keep my head down as I sit back up. Our last pose is Shavasana. It's the deep relaxation pose. I'm folding the blankets back the narrow way again. This will support my spine and move my two sets of ribs away from each other and expand my chest. When my chest is expanded, I always feel like I have more room to breathe, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. Do you see how I'm leaving a little space for my lower back between the blankets and the floor? That's important. I start with my legs together, and then, after I exhale, I release my legs from their roots at the tops of my thighs all the way to the shoots at the tips of my toes. So my legs are turning out, and I'm doing the same thing with my arms. I start by letting go of my attachment to my arms, my hands, and all of the activities that my hands do every day, and the attachment from my mind to my legs, to my feet, and all of the places that my feet carry me to every day. And then over the next few minutes, I let go not only of my organs of action, but my organs of perception, so that instead of seeing and hearing and touching, feeling, tasting the world around me through my senses, I close those windows and open, as B.K.S. Iyengar says, the windows to the soul, to divine enlightenment and wisdom. Just like in the previous poses, I turn over onto my side, rest for a moment. It's especially important here to keep your nerves as quiet and unruffled as possible as you sit back up. I always end every practice with a moment of gratitude to my teachers and to myself, because I am, after all, my own teacher. And to all of you, my students, who are also my teachers, I say namaste. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you.